This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support this show. We appreciate your support. You would get ad-free episodes and exclusive bonus episodes. Mm-hmm. Happy Halloween to those who celebrate.
Spooky Halloween.
Yes.
I lit a spooky candle for spooky ambience.
Yes, the whole place is going to burn down in 2 seconds.
No, it's not. It's a bleeding candle.
I don't know what that means.
You'll see in a minute.
So all the stories are scary. That's good.
I mean, that's just sort of
tracks.
The 21st century.
Yes. If you haven't voted, please go take care of that.
I voted on Tuesday. It
Good
took
for
about
you.
15 minutes.
Very nice.
Very easy to... Hey, when you voted...
Next time we have this podcast, we will have...
Can't really.
Mm-hmm.
I am in shockingly deep denial about this election. I truly have been I can't think about it too much, otherwise I'll lose my mind. And so... Yeah, although yesterday I was cleaning stalls and this sweet kid who is autistic was helping me, and he would not stop talking about how much he hated Trump, and that was pretty satisfying to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
anyway,
the right way to feel about anything
I feel terrible and scared and hopeful.
But go volunteer. Go make your phone calls. Go send postcards. Do whatever it is you can do at this point. Maybe not the postcards. It's too late.
Yeah.
But you can still... volunteer. Go do stuff.
Yeah, text
vote.
people, I guess. I don't know, man. It's this.
Give us reasons to have only 70% of the bad stories for the next 4 years.
Yeah, truly. This vibe that I am putting out is not the one I wish everybody else had.
It's cautious optimism.
Yeah, exactly. I think everybody else should. Yeah.
From very pessimistic people.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with this story.
Oh, boy.
This involves a pastor named Andrew Isker. He's actually based in Minnesota, but he was guest preaching at a church in Indiana. He is a guy in right-wing circles. But here's what won't surprise you. He made an argument for why everyone in the congregation needed to vote for Donald Trump because Johnson Amendment doesn't matter anymore.
Johnson Amendment, yep.
Yeah, that doesn't matter anymore. So we're just going to set that aside because the IRS doesn't do anything. But his argument for why people shouldn't support Kamala Harris is an unusual one. He actually has two reasons they shouldn't support her. I'm going to play the clip for you, and then we will discuss the craziness of what he said.
It's early for a clip. I'm excited.
I know.
Yeah.
Mrs. Harris, Mrs. Emhoff, who is running for president, right? Neither of her parents are from America, right? She was born in California, but they both were on student visas, right? She doesn't have a connection to the history of this people. She's legitimately born. They were married. Yep. But, right, if you think about the principle of what this is teaching, right, she is not connected to the past of this country whatsoever. It's a foreign past to her, right? She doesn't have ancestors that fought in the Civil War or ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War. Rod, yesterday is talking about, I was envious of him, actually, about all of his ancestors from Jamestown and things like that. I'm like, man, he's way more American than me. But she makes me look like I was on, like I'm a Mayflower descendant, right? And all of you too, right? It's insane.
The silent crowd is this very funny.
The
baby.
Who is without a future, and without much of a past, at least here, is attaining the highest office in the land, is being installed as the president of the United States.
Yeah, we'll set aside the installed thing. What the hell does that mean? So his idea...
What does he mean with no future? Because she doesn't have biological kids?
Yes, he has two reasons she can't be president. One is she doesn't have biological kids, and stepkids apparently don't count in this guy's world. Apparently what is okay is having multiple children with multiple wives, and that is apparently better than being a stepmother to two kids that you consider your own, because that's how step-parenting works.
Isn't Trump only a second-generation American?
That's a very interesting point.
Oh, thank you so much, Hemant.
Yeah,
I'm an interesting
first of all,
co-host.
the Constitution says anyone born in this country can be president. That's why they got mad about Obama, because he also is black. But they're like, well, he wasn't born in this country. They can't
Wasn't Ted Cruz literally born in Canada?
Yes. No. Ted Cruz. There was an exception for Ted Cruz.
Oh, of course.
Because it was military. So I don't know. It doesn't matter. But Kamala Harris can become president. They know that because she was born in the United States. So they can't say the same thing like, oh, she was born in Kenya. So this guy seems unconcerned that if we limited the presidency to only people whose ancestors were here like 150 years ago, 200, 300 years ago, that office would be closed off to virtually everybody who's not white. He doesn't make that connection at all. He actually said, you heard him, it looks like I'm a Mayflower descendant. She makes me look like I'm a Mayflower descendant, and all of you too, which is a very weird way of saying this audience is 100% white.
Yeah.
But also,
I assumed that it's in Indiana.
Like, descendants of slaves would technically be included under that umbrella because they've been here for a long time too. But I have a feeling this guy is not considering any of those people.
No.
But like you pointed out, you know who does not have ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War or the Civil War? Donald Trump. His grandfather immigrated to the U.S. from Germany in 1885. And why? To avoid military service.
No.
Yes. Like grandfather, like grandson. Yes. So that's this guy's argument. You have to have a history in this country because apparently it doesn't matter what the Constitution says. That's just what crazy people follow. He says the only way you can be eligible for president is if your roots are based in the U.S. several hundred years ago, which is a thing he just made up.
As a certified history dork, the fuck is this guy talking about? There is absolutely no way he knows anything about history.
He does not.
Like I think that is oh my God.
And then the other thing he said is the biological children. He says implies that if you don't have biological children, you can't be president because you're only concerned with the present and not the future.
Which is wild because evangelical Christians think the world is ending tomorrow. Do I need to turn my mic up?
Maybe. Who knows? But yeah, like this idea that the people who think Jesus is coming for them because he's going to rescue them and rapture them, they are okay to be concerned about the future, but the people who don't have biological children but actually have plans to think about the future of our country and the planet, those people are I've tried to logic this thing and then it hurt my head.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with this guy.
Many things.
I know exactly what's wrong with him. He is a sexist, racist, and is making up reasons for... Wait, why did they accept that she was born in California, but they didn't accept that Obama was born in America?
Because we're over the black thing now, and now we're looking for other reasons to disqualify her.
Oh, I see.
Yes, she's the wrong type of black
one
person.
could argue that being a child of two... immigrant students is the most American thing that a person could be.
Absolutely argue that, but then you don't go to this guy's church.
Oh,
or
darn.
where he's speaking at.
Shoot.
Because they're all
Does that mean I don't get to go
from
back
the Mayflower,
to Indiana?
wink, wink. So my favorite thing about this is if you watch the original sermon on YouTube, like the title of the sermon is listed in the title of the YouTube video for this.
Oh, what's it called?
And it's called something generic, but he's specifically referring to Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 1 and 2. Like, that is listed in the video that he's basing this argument about who to vote for based on 2 verses from the Bible.
Tell me you're going to read them to me.
I will read them to you because they make no sense. They have nothing to do with having biological kids or having to have immigrants. having a long roots in the United States.
Well, frankly, I don't think the Bible has a lot to say about
the United States.
About the United States or what qualifies one to be president of said states.
And I
had that it's 1,000 years older than the United States.
I had to do a double take when I read Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 1 and 2, because I remembered, these verses? Okay, chapter...
Deuteronomy is a random... Go ahead.
All right. No one who has been emasculated by crushing or cutting may enter the assembly of the Lord. If your balls have been crushed or cut off, you don't get into heaven.
It's so weird because I was just Googling castratos last night. What are the chances? As one does.
And the other
I wasn't sure
verse,
if they were real or not, okay?
The other verse, no one born of a forbidden marriage, nor any of their descendants, may enter the assembly of the Lord.
What I like about the Bible is it's very specific.
Very specific about things no one cares about. And again, what's the forbidden marriage? Her parents are different races.
That's
Is
forbidden.
that forbidden? Is that
Wait,
what
are
he's
they
getting
mad
at?
about race mixing when there's not a white person involved?
They could be. You never know with these people.
It really is hard to put your finger on what it is they don't like besides just the existence of brown people.
A brown woman.
Brown woman.
Democrat. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know you've screwed up when you're basing your presidential endorsement on a verse that says someone whose balls have been destroyed can't get into heaven.
No eunuchs, thank you.
Yeah.
Signed God.
Yeah, and Right Wing Watch pointed out, like, who is this guy? Is he some random dude just saying stupid things? No, he is a far-right Christian nationalist who worked with Douglas Wilson, who runs that little Christian cult in Moscow, Idaho, and he co-wrote a book called Christian Nationalism, a biblical guide for taking dominion and discipling nations, with Andrew Torba, who is an anti-Semitic guy who founded the social media site Gab. So these
Should I have heard of any of those things that you said?
Listen, if you spend 23 hours a day just immersed in politics, then the answer is yes.
All right.
For normies, the
that's
answer
me.
is absolutely not.
Okay.
But that's to say
he's also,
this
quote,
isn't
unquote,
some
taking-
random dude. This is a guy who is connected to like right-wing people with some notoriety. Just a dangerous mix of religious extremism, political conservatism. And look, pastors can always find obscure verses and interpretations to argue
It's
why
the beauty of the Bible.
everyone who doesn't look and live like they do have no business running the country. But what's interesting is when Right Wing Watch shared that clip, one person who chimed in was this pastor's wife, who's like, I don't know how to use Final Cut Pro, so I'm thankful Right Wing Watch could make this clip for me. Super proud of her husband for saying this racist shit.
That's extremely funny of her.
Yeah.
If that was a joke, that's a very funny joke.
I'm too stupid. So thanks you guys for making this clip of my husband saying racist, sexist stuff.
I really, boy, oh boy, I wish I didn't think that was so fucking funny because that's very good, but also monsters.
Yes. All right. Let
Funny
me get
people
to the
can be
story
monsters. Monsters can be funny
actually
people.
wanted to get to.
Oh.
That was the appetizer.
I love how you say that as if it's not your job to put these in order.
I know. I was debating. Should I do the bigger story first or second? I thought, you know what? That's your palate cleanser. Let me give you the real one. Okay. There's a woman named Alex Gooding. Alexandra, I think. But like Alex Gooding, she's one of those trad wives who always posts online about her ever-growing family.
Oh, sure.
How many kids does she have? 7.
That's too many kids.
That's too few if you're a trad wife. And she says on Instagram she has 6 in heaven, which is a lot of times.
Is that miscarriages?
Yes.
Okay.
And her identity
Jesus.
basically boils down to being a proud, quote, Christian mom of many. She's not an
Of
evangelical.
many, so she doesn't have to update her profile every time she has
Yeah.
a new kid.
She's actually not an evangelical. She's under the Orthodox Christian Church umbrella, which is just a conservative church, but it's not evangelical.
never
Don't ask me to
heard
explain
of
more.
that. I shan't.
But she works, I mean, online, her profiles, her social media, it functions just as much as some fundamentalist Christian trad wife mom. Okay.
yeah.
So her family, she says, we're about to grow larger by 1 because Chloe Marie is on the way in a few months. And this is all she posts about now.
I don't love when people post the names of their children before they're born. It makes me feel uncomfortable for some reason. Maybe I should talk to my therapist about it.
It'll get worse.
Oh, boy.
And part of telling everyone about the pregnancy, besides the fact that she...
Is there going to be a trigger warning about, like, dead kids or something like
No.
that? Okay.
Maybe.
What?
The reason I'm not surprised she's posting about her kids because what else is she going to talk about? Her ideas?
Sure.
Not really, no. But she pointed out that her Chloe Marie is on the way because there is a serious complication and she wants to take her followers on the journey with her. And this is what she basically has said over the course of many posts on Instagram, many reels on Instagram, videos of her talking to the camera. Doctors have told her this is going to be an ectopic pregnancy. It did not implant inside the uterus, so this may not end well.
No, it's not going to end well.
Correct. It's not going to end well. And what they told her, and I was not as familiar with this, it usually, sorry, I'm Brown, but not a Dr. Brown,
You went to
usually the
medical school.
ectopic pregnancy is in the fallopian tube,
Correct.
and that's why it's not gonna
It implanted
be a
in the
viable
wrong
pregnancy.
place, and you cannot grow a baby in your fallopian tube. It
Right.
needs to be in the uterus.
But what they told her is this is a cesarean scar ectopic pregnancy, which is a rare condition in which the embryo implants inside the scar tissue left over from a previous C-section.
I've never heard of
I had not
that.
heard of that either. So what's important to know is, just like any other ectopic pregnancy, this is also almost never viable. And so without surgically or medically removing the embryo, your life is in serious danger.
Yeah, you can start bleeding out. You can get infected.
This is directly from one medical website trying to explain what this is. The scar tissue is not as strong as the uterine wall and can tear and may result in hemorrhage. The placenta will grow in the wrong place, causing bleeding and potentially leading to a hysterectomy, damage to surrounding organs, or death of the pregnant patient.
Oof.
Okay, so unpleasant. It happens, not your fault, but obviously there is a solution, because what's more important, trying to have this baby or trying to protect the life of the mother, which is in serious danger. And pretty much every doctor I have seen quoted on this issue, every medical website that I consulted trying to understand this issue, they all say terminating the pregnancy is the best way to protect the woman and avoid catastrophic problems down the line.
Yeah.
You want to have another baby down the line, you're going to have to terminate this pregnancy, because the alternatives are going to prevent you from having kids in the future.
Right.
Okay. Now, Alex Gooding is a conservative who thinks abortion is evil. So, what her social media has been
Rubber
saying
is about to meet the road.
she says she's planning to continue the pregnancy.
No, she's not.
Despite the advice of a doctor who apparently told her everything he could to like knock some sense into her. This is one of the posts that she made talking about the doctor. Actually, she said, I went immediately to somebody after my first midwife ultrasound told me I needed to terminate. This doctor told me that I would die, and he already called the OB my midwife works under, and they would meet me at the hospital ASAP. I was over an hour from home. My husband was not with me. I told them I would not be making any decisions today, especially without my husband. He did tell me the risks, which I was familiar with because one of those risks I had with another child. I left the appointment and cried the entire drive home. Fine.
Yeah.
Matt was on a call with work, so he couldn't debrief with me on the drive home. I tried to call my priest, yada, 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 yada. When I got home, she basically said in another post, because she goes on for a while here, she said, I started researching that day, and over the weekend I found 2 Facebook groups, every article I could get my hands on, stories from survivors on YouTube, and more. And I'm just going to pause there for a second. She has seen survivors of these pregnancies online, and I'm just going to point out, if they didn't make it because they did the stupid thing, they're not going to make YouTube videos. It's
called survivorship bias.
That is correct. Then,
survivorship? Is that what
survivorship bias. So later on, she said, Matt and I were met with some hostility by the OB. He told me that my baby would probably die anyway because her heartbeat was 114 and she was measuring 2 to 3 days behind, which is perfectly normal, by the way.
I'm sure you know better than the doctor.
And 2, when I told him I would not be killing my baby today, he turned to Matt only and told him he has to make me terminate then. This was not a good experience, and honestly, I have zero respect for how he treated us that day.
It sounds like you were being an absolute turd to him.
I believe
he's trying to save your life and he got mad about it.
That's pretty much how I took it, where the doctor's saying, you need to do, this is the option to save your life. And she's like, nope, I'm not doing it. Okay, hey, your husband, if you want to save your wife, this is what you got to do. And she's like, what? Why are you talking to him?
Which is funny because, like, if she's a trad wife, then that should be right up her alley.
The men
like,
make
thank
the
God she doesn't
anyway.
have to think about this anymore.
And the thing is, like, the response she's been giving isn't just infuriating, it's selfish. Because here's the doctor giving them the sad, tragic truth, which is, look, the baby's almost certainly not going to survive. Probably not at all. I don't know what the percentage chance is, but it's not good. And there's a good chance Alex is not going to make it either. And the doctor's trying to convince these boneheads of what your path looks like, and they're responding by getting mad at the doctor. And besides that, I think it's very selfish to continue a pregnancy that could leave your other 7 children without a parent,
motherless,
due entirely to your own ignorance and stubbornness.
Oh, boy. I mean, this is... golly, this has to be devastating for her.
Devastating, I understand.
But
and
also,
sharing
like,
that journey, I also understand. It's the idiocy.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, these people have gotten themselves so wrapped up in their ideology that they're letting it make decisions for them. And unfortunately, sometimes those decisions involve like buying guns and
We
shit.
saw it on COVID too. Like,
Honestly,
get
I was thinking that exactly
vaccinated.
thing of like, oh, you're mad at the doctors.
But because some people decided that's now a culture war issue instead of the medically good thing to do, they decided, all right, vaccines are the thing I'm against. And it doesn't matter what doctors say about it. And I know it may come as a shock to her. She's not going to hear from a lot of people who died from similar pregnancy complications.
Right.
But she refuses to consider how many other pregnant people in her situation did not make it. Instead, all she's doing lately, smiling for the camera, not giving a damn about the kids she already has.
Bleeding internally.
Maybe, yeah. Like, there's nothing brave about what she's doing.
Horrible.
She's
this
not
is
a
a
role
terrible
model.
story.
Yes. And this is, by the way, this is a prime example of why even the most, and I use this in quotes, pro-life people say there should be exceptions for the life of the mother for cases like this. In fact, the Pew Research Center in 2022 did a survey. They found that among Americans who believe abortion should be illegal in most or all cases, nearly half of them, 46%, said abortion should still be an option if a woman's life or health is in jeopardy. And another 27% said it depends on the situation. And this is that situation.
But that depends on the mother wanting to save herself.
Right.
So I don't think they considered that.
Like a situation like this one is the sort of situation that would theoretically sway even the most anti-abortion zealots.
This is the definition of the exception to the abortion thing, is a non-viable pregnancy, and it's putting the pregnant person in danger. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and all of this is coming from someone who admits she has a history of high-risk pregnancies, who supports candidates who would remove choice as an option from anyone who's pregnant with no exceptions. And she's lucky in a way that it's not too late for her to do the right thing for her family.
What state is she in?
I don't know. Doesn't matter. But
Well, it kind of matters because it's illegal. Abortion is illegal in many states.
in pretty much every state, and I think it applies to whatever one she's in, this is a situation where the doctors wouldn't get in trouble for helping her
Got it.
out. But like, she doesn't have to do the thing she's telling everyone she's going to do. And there's another concern, though. What if I saw this conspiracy online that maybe she's faking it? Maybe
That's exactly what I was just
maybe
thinking.
this child is not in as much danger, or she's she's hyping up the danger she's in,
So she can survive and be a miracle lady.
That's right. And let's
Just
say
like Jesus would have done.
Let's say that's not the case. Let's say she's not lying for clicks or whatever it is she's doing. If everything works out as well as it possibly could, and she survives and the baby survives, then that means her advocacy right now is only going to discourage others in her situation from making their tragic but safer decision. Her survival could actually lead to more suffering for other people.
So let her die? Is that what you're saying?
So
No,
I
I'm
am
kidding.
not saying,
I understand
know.
you're not saying that.
I don't want her to suffer. I hope everything works out for them, but instead of using her platform responsibly and telling her followers, look, there are situations when even those of us who are anti-abortion might want to consider some nuance, she's instead pitching herself as a martyr for the cause, like it's her against the doctors.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, I was surprised to learn this. These are the same doctors who helped her have other kids that she got through IVF. A process she now says is immoral, but it's cool because I have my babies from it, so it's okay. But like, no one else should be doing it.
Excuse me?
Yep.
This cunt got IVF
Yep.
and is now saying that she can't terminate an ectopic pregnancy because Jesus?
Right. You got the
Fuck
story.
this bitch.
Right.
Are you fucking kidding me?
That's the response online.
Wow, Alex, you lost every drop of sympathy I had in my tiny, angry body.
So let's all congratulate the oldest girl in the family, who will soon maybe have to take over all the child rearing
New mom.
and household responsibilities, because mommy wants to play Russian roulette with her own body, and there's no chance that the father's going to help raise the
No,
kids.
if I know Christians, that man will be remarried within a calendar year of her death. I wish
And
that
the
was a joke
bride-
not based on reality, and yet here I am.
Dare I ask how old the bride is? Nothing about this screams choosing life. This sends the message that this woman is more interested in giving birth than raising the family she already has.
Jesus Christ, this fucking lady.
And a bunch of people pointed out online that, like we said, this continues this pernicious mindset that developed especially over the pandemic or ramped up over the pandemic, where some people decide their own research matters more than solid medical advice that tells you you're an idiot.
Yeah.
They would rather die to own the libs than take solid advice that might contradict their pre-existing beliefs.
Can I tell a quick anecdote that I've been meaning to tell, and I just
Sure.
remembered it? Speaking of people who get married within a year of their spouse's death, I went to a wedding like that of a very, very close family friend. Like, this woman was sort of, I thought she was my aunt until I understood like how that works. She passed away in 2008, and her husband got remarried by the end of the year. And this woman also had children. They're, in their 50s. And I have a very strong memory, and I might have even told the story on this podcast, of sitting at their wedding, which was like in the Milwaukee Aquarium, which was pretty dope. But the reason they got married so quickly is they wanted to be sexually pure.
Of course.
Which is really chill when you're in your 60s and we're married for like 40 years. But anyway, it was very religious, obviously. And there was one point that everybody was praying, and I, as is my wont, was just sort of looking around to see, just what everybody does when they pray and be kind of a looky-loo.
Like atheists over Thanksgiving.
Exactly. Anyway, I made eye contact with this guy about my age. I would have been in my early 20s. And he gave me the most wonderfully dramatic eye roll because it was just like some stupid thing.
And that man is now Mikey.
Unfortunately, I wish it was a funny ending to this story. That man was the son of the bride, and he recently ended his own life.
Oh, well, now I look like an asshole.
You sure do, because he had an incredibly conservative Christian upbringing. I read the obituary, and it was just full of euphemisms and things like that. So I don't know. When we talk about Christians being monsters to their kids or whoever, like, this stuff is like, I just want everyone to know I take this shit really serious. Like, no matter what I say or act, like, this is stuff I take seriously. I think that this woman's poor gay son just wanted to be himself and was faced with people who wouldn't allow that. And I have such a clear memory of his beautiful eye roll and I didn't know him. That was my only encounter with him. But anyway, it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. And I wanted to share that story.
Yeah, that's sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it really sucks, doesn't it? But like, again, I can't even pull his name right now. It's just an impact that was.
We hear from a bunch of people who listen to this show who share similar stories. One of the reasons they gravitate to this podcast or other ones that discuss similar ideas is because they grew up in sort of households where no one talks about this stuff, not openly.
Yeah.
And when they start having thoughts about it, it's like, oh, I'm not the weird one anymore. And I mean, we appreciate that they're willing to share that stuff with us. But yeah, that's a very real concept.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate in the case of this lady, it's unfortunate that her kids may end up in a position where they're stuck in a situation that they don't have to be in, all because their mother was this selfish.
Yeah, and I just think it's worth remembering that the consequences for these sort of culture wars that they're picking is death, is we're losing people. And I don't know.
I heard this is not to change the subject entirely, but the election next week.
No, I want to sit here in silence for the rest of this.
People have been saying there's certain states where abortion is on the ballot, and how will that affect the race, whatever. Abortion is on the ballot across the country.
Sure.
Doesn't matter if you live in a red state or blue state or swing state, because if Republicans win enough, take over the Senate and the presidency, there will be like a national abortion ban.
Yeah.
So abortion is on the ballot everywhere. Treat it as such.
I also, this week, this sounds like I'm making it up. It super isn't. A girlfriend of mine came to meet me at the barn and told me that she had to have an abortion because she got pregnant and was on medication, whatever. And we stood in a stall as I shoveled shit and talked about, thank fucking Christ we live in Illinois. Because, like, this is a whole thing she's going through now, which sucks and is uncomfortable and unfortunate. But at least she didn't have to, like, sneak across a border or, like, what I just...
People mention this to Alex, that woman we were just talking about, too, which is you have a choice about what to do, but you want to take it away from all these other people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I don't think dying for no specific reason is noble. But if she thinks that this is the way she's going to get to heaven, then yeah, I'm excited to read her oldest daughter's memoir about how terrible her life was.
Yeah.
This fucking asshole. I hate her.
It's weird that some of the commentary is, I really hope you're just exaggerating this to become a martyr for the cause. Because the alternative is you're telling us the truth, and this is not going to end well for you.
Or you're lying for clicks, which is gonna...
And I hope you're lying because...
I honestly... Ooh, do I hope she's dying or lying more?
I don't have sympathy right now, but I am following this. She's very popular on Fundy Snark on Reddit.
Is she blonde?
Don't know. Didn't look. Yeah, ish. I don't know if it's dyed. Whatever.
Of course, if she's blonde, it's dyed.
Okay.
Do brown people not know that? All women dye their hair. All white women dye their hair.
Not all hair colors that are not black are foreign to me.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
All right, let's talk about Broadway. Okay.
Give my regards to Broadway.
Jesus Christ. Let's say you're staging a play.
I am.
On Broadway. How does that happen? You don't just stage your play on Broadway. You go to
so much money. You have to go to Hal Prince, the greatest producer in Broadway.
Yes, that is how it works. You find some rundown theater somewhere else. You stage your play. You work out the kinks and everything. And then maybe if it's kind of popular in your shabby theater, you can move it to a different one later on and get the money to do all that. So in New York City's East Village, there's a place called the Connolly Theater that has been the launching pad for a bunch of productions that might have seemed obscure at first, but that went on to successful runs on Broadway in London.
Examples?
There were a couple. I don't know if they're in front of me. We'll
London
see.
is called West End.
Yeah, or in the West End. But like, and the weird thing about the Connolly Theater is that the building itself that it's located in is owned by the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York. The Connolly Theater shares building space with an all-girls Catholic school.
That just made me like start sweating. What the fuck does that?
It's kind of amusing and kind of funny, but it hasn't ever mattered because they all, like, the theater pays the rent, that whatever they owe, and that rent actually funds the school because it's a free tuition school for Catholic kids or kids of Catholic parents.
That's a complicated legacy.
It is very weird, but it hasn't been a problem. And according to some articles I saw about it, they basically said there is a priest who oversees this part of the archdiocese in New York City. And there have been a few different guys in that role, but mostly it was a hands-off approach. Sure. Like, the way it works is that the people who are the producers of these shows might send a script or like, here's what we're staging next.
Sure.
Because we have to share it with you. You own the building. You have to know what we're doing in here.
Weird.
And the priest just signs off on it. It's just a formality and everything. Everyone just does whatever it is they do.
Right.
Okay. So what's weird to me is I would have thought, and I think this is your first thought too, is this theater kind of run like Catholic hospitals with the archdiocese saying, we have a set of rules for what you're allowed to do on our property, and it doesn't matter what you want, what the public needs. No, none of that seemed to be a problem.
That's interesting. Even
though the theater's contract allowed the church to censor material if it wanted to,
they just didn't.
They just didn't. The show contracts were always greenlit. Now, was that because the priests were never paying attention?
That could be.
Did they not care? I don't know. But they always just signed off on whatever was going on because the theater brings in money and the money pays for the other stuff the church wants to do.
And knowing theater people, I feel like the students who are there from like 7 to 3 will never see a theater person during that time.
I think they are in different parts of the building, maybe different floors entirely. So it's not even an issue.
Sure.
It's never been an issue.
Sure.
So all well and good. They worked well together. And The church may have also liked the fact that when the shows, some of them become popular, it's actually good for local businesses. Of course
sure.
it is, because you
Yeah.
get all these people coming in to see the shows. And that means, hey, our whole community is better off, right? So I'm not familiar with these shows, but here's some of the ones they did stage. One is called Circle Jerk,
That's
which was
funny.
actually a Pulitzer finalist in 2021.
Wow.
And they also host a yearly festival called She NYC, which aims to platform women, trans, and non-binary people.
Cool.
So cool. None of that's happening anymore.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So apparently the latest priest who oversaw the theater
Oh, like
and
a new
signed off
guy
on
got
stuff.
promoted or whatever?
No, like every time a new guy got promoted, they just kept carrying on. Like, all
Sure.
right, tell me what to sign, whatever. But after the last priest stepped away from that role over the summer, he was never replaced. Instead, the archdiocese says, all right, all those contracts, you send them higher up because we don't have someone in the middleman position anymore. And now the archdiocese, whoever is running the show there, they are starting to censor any material that contradicts Catholic beliefs, basically micromanaging which productions can rent the space.
How long is a run usually in that space? Do you know?
I think it totally depends, but they
Okay.
might sign leases for several months at
Sure.
a time. Now, why are
I'm just
they
wondering how
doing
many
all this?
like plays are coming through in a year or something like that, but that's probably hard to
I don't know.
gauge.
But why are they doing it now? No one knows why they've decided to go all in on micromanaging the stuff now when all these shows have been going on for years.
Yeah.
But you may recall that last year when we talked about this, Sabrina Carpenter filmed a video for one of her songs inside a Catholic church in New York City.
I do remember
And
that.
they got permission from a priest who said, yeah, we're not using the church on this day. If you want to rent it, you're allowed to rent it.
Sure.
And I watched the video. I don't think it was offensive. It wasn't anti-Catholic, but
No,
of
it's
course,
just in a Catholic church.
a sexy woman inside a church dancing around like a coffin, whatever she was doing. I don't know. I don't understand music.
It says here you were in a church.
But people found the video offensive, and like everyone in the Catholic Church flipped the fuck out. So maybe now they're like, we need to make sure anyone using our buildings are adhering to our code of conduct. Maybe that's why. And again, the
God.
church has the legal right to do this.
Hey.
No one is saying the church is overstepping some legal boundary here.
Well, it's not illegal to be an asshole.
Correct. So the relationship, though, between the two sides has basically been permanently severed, and now the arts community is having to deal with the fallout.
Sure.
And so here's an article. This was from the New York Times. Producer Lucas McMahon said in an email that the archdiocese had, quote, destroyed the viability of an important cultural institution and that it's a, quote, crushing loss to the off-Broadway and artistic community. The She NYC Summer Theater Festival, which I mentioned for platforms female, non-binary, trans artists, was told by their manager this month that it was not likely to be approved by the archdiocese, so you got to find a new place for next summer.
That's a bummer.
And the manager who was overseeing that place has now, I believe, resigned. He was the theater's director and its general manager. He said he's unwilling to continue the job under the current circumstances.
Good for him.
Quote, remaining in this position now requires screening production proposals for any content that is objectionable to the Catholic Church. This puts me in the untenable position of becoming a censor rather than an advocate of artistic freedom.
There you go.
Yeah. The Archdiocese Director of Communications told the New York Times, it is the standard practice of the Archdiocese that nothing should take place on church-owned property that is contrary to the teaching of the church. Which is a very weird thing to say because they're acting a hell of a lot faster in shutting down this theater than they've ever done in response to abusive priests
No
who you would
kidding.
think violate the rules
Yeah,
of
that's what I
the
was thinking.
Catholic Church.
Don't they have other things to be worried about in the
Yeah.
Catholic Church in
Of
New
all
York City?
And again, think about this. Abuse in the Catholic Church, theoretically, that contradicts whatever their rules are, but we know how
yeah,
slow
well,
they've
there's
been
no
to...
commandment that says God shall or thou shalt not molest children who
Right.
are under your care when you're a priest.
Right.
Which
And
is an oversight.
You could also argue that platforming a trans writer, script writer, to put on that show, that actually does not contradict the Catholic Church's trans people don't exist belief. And like the Catholic Church says, same-sex couples cannot be married under the church. They should not. It's gravely immoral to have gay sex. Okay, fine. That is their belief. But putting on a show where characters may do that or discuss those issues, none of that actually contradicts Catholic beliefs. It discusses things the Catholic Church may disagree with, but it doesn't necessarily mean these shows are anti-Catholic or violating Catholic rules.
I wonder, it seems to me maybe it's not as much about like specifically Catholicism as much as like a general censorship of like we'd rather shit be PG than rated R.
That's exactly
that
is what their position is, but also that's what's your rules now?
Yeah, truly. Like, and art does not thrive under censorship. I think we can agree.
But if they had a play that centers around abortion rights, for example, does that violate the Catholic belief that abortion is a grave sin and you can't have an abortion under any circumstances? Well, a play isn't necessarily...
They're not having an abortion on the stage every night.
If they did... Okay, let's talk about that play because that's a lot of stuff happening every night, 8 times a week.
Yeah, I feel like HIPAA rights would be pretty violated there.
You got to get a lot of Christian influencers for that one. But the church seems more interested in making sure people don't challenge its beliefs at all rather than giving anyone a reason to accept them.
Yeah, doesn't the Catholic Church have shit they should be worried about?
No, this is their only priority now.
Or why don't you say like, oh yeah, put on whatever play you want. People will see this like bacchanal of nonsense and then come crawling to church the next day to repent.
Next door.
Yeah.
Send your kids to the school.
Actually, I love that business model.
Advertisement in every, whatever the version of Playbill is for shows that aren't on Broadway yet. I would like to see them do like what the Mormon Church did with the Book of Mormon.
Truly.
Advertise your stuff. So while people are looking through their program, they're learning more about what you offer.
Okay, here's my question. Is the Catholic Church's like overall job to like grow their roles? Like, is it like even...
To grow the church?
Yeah.
That has to be part of it.
Like, why
I don't
are they
think
being
they
such...
come in like, what are your numbers this month, Bob?
But like, why are they being such fucking dorks about it then? Like, you're not, like, by saying like, hey, all this cool shit that's not Catholic is just making people think Catholicism sucks, which...
And I also don't get the thought process of, you know what we don't want? Sabrina Carpenter in one of our churches giving it prominence in one of her videos.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of marketing, I feel like your strategy of, we don't want popular people in our building seems like it could backfire or at least not give you the publicity you want.
Or even the idea of, like... Maybe that video is kind of trying to incorporate the church into more
church imagery,
culture.
So that people understand it more, whatever.
I don't know.
So like, the end result now is that shows...
Don't be fucking dorks for once.
Shows that have now been canceled because they can't function in that space are now scrambling to find new spaces. The administrators for the theater are resigning, and it's not even clear if the Catholic school that exists in that building will now have the funding it needs to stay open.
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
So the Archdiocese is like cutting off its nose to spite its face. It would be kind of ironic and kind of funny if a Catholic school shut down because the LGBTQ friendly artists were not around to prop it up anymore.
I would love that. That does sound wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now some of the theater producers are speaking out. There is a show called Job, which is now on Broadway, and it first opened at the Connolly, and they said the church's move undermines the mission of great theater. This is what they said. We are shocked and disappointed that the Catholic Church has shuttered one of downtown's most beloved theaters. Simply put, Job would not be on Broadway without the Connolly Theater. Great theater is an exchange of ideas, an opportunity for audiences to develop empathy and understanding. The church undermines that quest for shared humanity with its decision. And then they called on the church to reopen the theater so artists can gather. And in the meantime, we invite Cardinal Dolan to come to the Hayes Theater to see Job on Broadway. He can experience firsthand the powerful theater he's now turning his back on.
Wow.
Yeah. She NYC is also now in a perilous position because trying to find a new theater when they had a good rental rate for a long time, they're now trying to find a place to house their stuff. And its leaders have also pointed out, this may screw us over, This is their statement. We have been told that plays about gender, sexuality, and especially reproductive rights, with the church specifically calling out shows we've done in the past at the theater,
Really?
will not be approved going forward and are considered not appropriate for the venue. Our contract will only be renewed for 2025 if we only select shows that avoid these topics that are so important to our artist, audience, and mission.
Yeah.
This makes it impossible to produce the She NYC Festival at the Connolly, ... We are now in a tight spot trying to find a new theater to house next year's festival, and it's likely to be way more expensive than what we've got the budget for, as we had a generous rate with the Connolly. So I don't know. I don't know what happens now. The Archdiocese isn't going to care because the arts help people develop more empathy, compassion, and tolerance.
They hate that.
And they do hate that. It elevates voices that we are not used to hearing. It highlights problems with our society so that we can address them in the real world. Catholic Church doesn't do a good job of that, which is why you got to go to theater if you want to see that stuff in action. Like, you are more likely to find acts of love and mercy on stage than you ever would inside a conservative Catholic facility. And that's why the church, with its immense wealth, is kind of doing what Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have done with their wealth, which is shut down the voices they don't want to hear using whatever power they have to get it done.
Well, good for them. As long as they're going to heaven or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, boy. Like, it makes me kind of insane when, like, conservative people are anti-arts. Because those are always the one who are like, oh, my God, this song says everything about me, but I don't think people should be funded to write music. Like, you can't love movies and music and television and musicals and theater and all this stuff and also not put any sort of effort into making sure more of it can
people
happen.
hate the National Endowment for the Arts because it funds stuff you may find offensive, but if you don't support the arts, you don't have a culture anymore.
Well, and also, oh God, who was it? There was somebody who wrote a really famous play, and he did it on a grant that you used to be able to get to be a playwright. Like, you used to be able to apply to a grant and be like, I want to write a play. And they give you, I don't know, $50,000 so you don't have to work or whatever, and you can write your play. Like, that used to be a thing.
That's how grants work.
But that used to be a thing like individuals could do. And there are like works of art that only exist because we support artists who make this shit. I fucking hate it all. Like,
maybe this will inspire more art that goes directly at the Catholic Church. Why not?
It just truly, like, the people with money, and they want to spend their money on like fancy, nice things, but don't want to support anybody who makes those things. And like, all they do, I fucking hate rich people. I am telling you.
I figured I would make you madder now.
I don't want to be madder. It's Halloween.
There's a Christian pastor named Joel Webbin. I believe we've talked about him before. He's one of those Theo Bros, white evangelical churches.
Did you say Theo Bro?
Yep.
What
all
the fuck
alpha, male, patriarchal, men rule. Jesus tells me men rule.
Theo Bro. I've never, like, theocracy?
There's a wonderful article in Mother Jones about basically labeling these guys who say the worst shit online, and they do it in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And they just combine everything you hate about, like, Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate.
And a big truck.
And a big truck, along with whatever they want to quote about the Bible.
Sure.
And they do this kind of as an informal group, and they just keep getting worse.
Yeah.
And they're the ones, you may have seen this conversation online. There's an ad for Kamala Harris narrated by Julia Roberts where it says, I'm paraphrasing, hey ladies, when you go into the voting booth, your vote is secret. You don't have to tell your husband. And these guys got so pissed off because they believe they control their wives and therefore their wives' votes. And they got so mad.
That's
mad about the idea that people are encouraging women. Jesse Waters on Fox News is like, whatever, if my wife did that, I would divorce her. What? Like, yeah, buddy, that's.
I will say, if I found out Mikey voted for Trump, I would be fucking furious.
There's a conversation about difference of values, but that's not this conversation. Anyway, that's who Joel Webbin is. He's one of these Theo Bro sort of dudes. And in a recent sermon he gave at Covenant Bible Church in Georgetown, Texas, which is not too far from Austin, I will tell you more about this church in a little bit, his basic argument during a recent sermon is that, you know who we should kill? It should be women who falsely accuse men of rape. And he says the Bible says we should totally do this because there is something in the Bible that says if you accuse someone of a crime and your allegation is found to be false, the penalty for you is whatever penalty your person that you accused would have gotten had you been telling the truth.
So a slap on the wrist?
So, well, if you... high five, yes. That was weak. So
yeah, that's because you're a terrible high fiver, and I
Yes.
made a great fucking joke.
Sure. If the alleged crime warranted the death penalty, then the lying accuser could be put to death. And by the way, he says you got to do it in public because why not?
Sure, yeah,
So-
that's the problem with our society is we need to bring back public hangings.
Yes. So I'm not going to play the clip because I don't want to demonetize this entire thing. But basically what he said, if you perjure yourself by bearing false witness, accusing somebody else, whatever the penalty would have been for that person, had they been found guilty, then that penalty should fall on your head for falsely accusing them.
Okay.
If that were to occur and the just penalties were to be enforced, you, the false accuser, is now put to death.
I'm sorry, what
Then he
the
goes
fuck
on.
is he talking about?
Then he goes on to say, and he wants this in public, and he says, if we did this in America, you know what would happen? And I'm quoting now.
You'd be murdered?
Hashtag Me Too would end real fast. False accusing, playing the victim when you're actually not. You know how to end that real fast? All you have to do is publicly execute a few women who have lied.
Oh my fucking God. Are you kidding? Okay, I have 50 things I need to
Go
say.
on.
One is, since fucking when is rape a thing for, like, a death penalty case?
Yeah, we don't punish that with the death penalty now. But he's going back to, I think, whatever they did in ancient Israel.
Oh, sure. We do base all of our laws on what they did in ancient Israel.
Yeah, or modern
That's
Iran
why I float my
or
baby
whatever.
down the river on a thing of reeds, like
Yes.
Moses, I guess.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
Oh, God, these people hate women so fucking much. I don't...
By the way, the audience in the congregation, they kind of gasped when he said all this, and then he added, like, not a, how could you say that? It was more like a, that was extreme.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't
then
expecting that.
He basically adds, there are nicer ways to say that. The reason I say things the way I do is because I'm convinced there's not a better way to say it. I think that's precisely the way to say it. So
That guy
doubling.
just explained what speaking is.
yeah.
When I choose words, I want them to represent my thoughts.
He wanted to clarify, by the way.
Sure.
Obviously, we should also execute the rapists. But anyway, let me spend 99% of what I'm saying talking about the women who make this up.
I don't know, man.
All right.
Like,
We will discuss.
I just don't know how to deal with men who think that being accused of a thing that statistically is not going to happen to them is worse than
doing the thing.
And one in four women experiences sexual assault in their lifetime.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And
Like,
it's almost always at the hands of somebody they know.
this guy never spends any time arguing, by the way. He knows that right now, if you're a rapist, you do not get the death penalty. But he's not making the argument that we should heighten the punishments for men who are accused of that. He doesn't spend any time talking about that because if he did, they're going to have to say goodbye to a bunch of their religious colleagues and preferred political candidates.
Do they get this mad at people who commit like insurance fraud?
No.
Okay.
Uh-huh. There's a hierarchy of sins. Don't you get the memo?
Tax evasion,
No,
I
that's
think,
fine.
is worse.
What,
because
violating IRS guidelines? No.
I don't know.
So
These
then-
people are so full of hate and vitriol.
He said Me Too would end real fast. Why would
What
it
does that
end?
mean?
Like, the movement was not about false allegations. It was about women sharing stories about how they've been survivors of abuse in order to let other women know they are not alone. Unless, of course, you believe that the women telling those stories include a whole bunch of liars.
I don't know. Like,
then-
when I talk about like the sexual assaults that happened to me, I don't even know one of the dudes' names anymore. Like, I'm not trying to like gun for them. I just am like, hey, this thing happened to me. It was twice perpetrated by two dudes whom I knew, and like, I'm not asking for, I'm just asking to be heard. I'm asking to be acknowledged. I'm asking that like men understand that this is a reality of life for women.
And then there's the question of how would they even know the woman is lying? I mean, many women don't speak up at all about assaults because they're aware of the negative repercussions awaiting them. If they speak up at all, we've seen what happens.
Yeah.
They're targeted, harassed, threatened. Even if you have the courage to deal with all that, it's still hard to like prove definitively that a man committed the crime. Just ask the prominent atheists who have been accused of sexual assault only to bounce right back from it, or Brett Kavanaugh, or Donald Trump. Like, what happens if a woman makes a true allegation, but then backs away from it because she's getting all these threats? Does that count as a lie? I don't know in these people's view.
Well, they don't care about women or what we have to say. So, like, why would they give a shit if we got raped? Like, because honestly, I think when they think rape, they think like grabbing somebody off the street and violently tearing their clothes off.
And that is the only way they define it.
Right. And that's simply not the reality of what it is. Yeah. And it's, God, fuck these people.
What happens if you accuse someone of rape in court? What if the man is not legally charged with rape? Is that enough in this guy's mind for the government to execute his accuser?
I think
he
so.
He did not elaborate on that. That's before we get into the genuinely hazy situations when you don't realize it was an assault until long after the fact. And if this guy's, I mean, I know,
but his argument would be like, if you didn't realize it at the time, then it wasn't a thing. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Which is insane.
If his fictional fantasy little law here went into effect, the end result would be more men raping women because women would be pressured to keep quiet about it lest they be accused of telling a lie.
I don't think more men would rape women, but I think they would talk about it more.
Yikes.
That's what I think.
The Houston Chronicle pointed out that, let's remove all the nuance for a second, false rape accusations are exceedingly rare. Obviously, accurate statistics are really hard to come by. But it's a very low percentage that you could say are false accusations. But that's what this guy is. This guy, by the way, Webben, he, on his ministry's website, here's how much of a Andrew Tate wannabe this guy is. He keeps a running list of his own controversies. Like, yeah, I was in the news about this. And one example is he said husbands should control what their wives read. And he's like, I did say that. However, you're all misunderstanding my point.
Oh, what did he mean?
I don't know, and I don't care.
Should I grab Mikey and ask if it's okay if I keep reading the LBJ books? Because he is pretty sick of me talking about LBJ today.
And then he said, if you're someone said, they got mad at me because I said Christians who willingly live in California are stupid. And he wants everyone to know that is what I said.
Does he know about the demographics of California?
That there are more Republicans in that state than anywhere else in the country, including Texas?
Swaths of it are hella rural. Like,
yes. Isn't there that story? Donald Trump didn't want to give California any money for like forest fires or something until one of his advisors said, this is how many Republicans live in California, and then he approved the federal funding. By the way, this guy Webben, not only is he an obvious Christian nationalist, guess who he's buddy-buddy with?
Ooh.
Dusty Devers, who is the Oklahoma state senator, who is like this guy, but elected to office in Oklahoma.
His name is Dusty Devers?
Yes, we've had this conversation about the dude's name.
Is he a cartoon character still?
He is.
Okay.
He filed a bill earlier this year, this calendar year. Dusty Devers filed a bill. Guess what it said? We should subject false accusers to whatever punishment their accusation would have warranted.
Oh, so
it is exactly this that he tried to get enacted into law in Oklahoma. So this is not just some pastor saying something stupid. His theology buddy is trying to make it a law in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma,
oh dear God, not the time. So the bill thankfully went nowhere. Like even Oklahoma, they were like, yeah, we're not taking this shit up.
What the fuck are you talking about, dog?
And anyway, Right Wing Watch also pointed out this guy works with also white Christian nationalists. He is a contributor to a document called the Statement on Christian Nationalism and the Gospel, which was drafted by a former Trump administration official named William Wolf.
Well, there's so many former Trump
There are
administrations.
so many. But that document says the U.S. has to formally, quote, acknowledge the lordship of Christ in all its laws, abolish abortion, outlaw marriage equality, and recapture our national sovereignty from godless global entities who present a grave threat to civilization.
Us, you and me?
Yeah, we're the threats.
Oh, God. I should be really hyping myself up more if I'm a global threat.
The funniest thing about
I'm going to
all
cause
this,
an international incident.
even though this guy is not like the new IFB hate preachers that
Yeah.
I've sometimes talked about, guess where his church is? I mentioned he was giving this sermon at his church, and his sermons are always camera on this guy and never at the congregation, which you know is fishy.
Do I know that's fishy?
It is fishy.
Okay.
So the Daily Mail, which I know is not reliable, but this is how they once
Well.
described the church. This guy, Joel Webbin, runs his church from a roadside restaurant outside Austin, which is true.
Oh, boy.
But he does have 200,000 followers on social media. And that's what this is about.
So when you say that it's just him, it's like him in a booth?
Pretty much. Like, I looked it up, and if you search for this church on Google Maps, you don't find it. You find, like, a restaurant.
The Greasy Spoon.
Like, there's a Chili's or something, and I guess his church is in a side room of the Chili's somewhere.
I
Something
cannot
like that.
believe how happy this is making me.
Yes.
Also, can you imagine going to Chili's? You just want to get a marg and some nachos, and some ding dong is in the corner screaming into his phone about like how women are too uppity these days.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
sir,
Oh.
I'm just trying to enjoy some queso.
Yeah, this is a guy who only plays for social media, but he has influence. Like I'm saying, that's the problem. It's not that his
We
congregation
have
is big.
influence. Like, how big is influence?
We
is
don't
as
have
if
friends who are writing laws based on the stupid sermon ideas we have.
we could make friends. I could make friends.
You could make friends. By the way, this guy has also tweeted things like how he doesn't trust black doctors because if he had the choice between here, let me read what he said.
Oh, please.
He said,
I hate for you to misquote.
He said he would choose a white doctor over a black doctor because of the likelihood that the black doctor, quote, did not have to prove as much merit.
Okay, joke's on him because all doctors are brown.
That is true. That is true.
I was thinking, I haven't had a white GP since I was like 16.
Look at you having a doctor like a
I have
fancy
a doctor.
person.
You don't have a GP?
No.
You're 40. Two?
Yeah.
One? You need to go to the doctor. I'm relying on you for my career. I don't have a retirement. You need to go to the doctor. Oh my God. Your 1 year of medical school is not going to carry you through the rest of your life.
I have family members,
That's
damn
the
it.
most violently American thing ever that you think having a GP is fancy.
I stand by what I said. This is a story I wanted
God,
to...
if you go to the doctor and find out you have like advanced pancreatic cancer, what am I going to do? I can't do this by myself. I'm going to have to pick up more shifts at the bar and my body can't take it. God damn it, Hammond.
Co-host
Think
with a
of me
horse.
for
Show me
once.
some damn respect.
Okay, everybody,
This is a...
encourage Hammond to go to the doctor. Look at the candle's bleeding. Is it spooky? Ooh.
Is this where the Patreon money goes?
Well, yeah.
The $2 has come to use. So
I
here's
mean,
a
yeah,
random
$2.50,
story.
but yeah.
There you go. This is a random story
I just
that has
love them.
nothing to do with the news, but I found it fascinating. And like every now and then I come across some scholarly paper and usually why would I read it? That's boring. I found this one very interesting and I want to talk to you about it. Here's the backstory. 2005, there's a guy named Amir Kando who goes to the back stairwell of his apartment building and just starts stabbing his neighbor with a knife. That's true. That happened.
Sorry, this is when and where?
This is in 2005, I think in New York City. But this dude just started
Jesus.
stabbing his neighbor. And it was unprompted. It nearly killed the guy. He did make it, but it was bad. And Kondo was soon charged with first-degree murder and a few other charges.
First degree murder. You said the guy survived.
He was charged with trying to commit first-degree murder.
Oh,
or something
attempted
like
murder
that.
is what we call
Attempted murder,
that.
sorry. Anyway, he was eventually declared by a trial judge to be guilty but mentally ill, meaning he may have had a mental illness, but it was not so profound that he did not know what he was doing.
Sure.
And that judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison.
Okay.
When the case reached an appellate court, that ruling was reversed.
Interesting.
And what that appellate court found is that, well, they declared him not guilty by reason of insanity.
Oh, good news. I know a lot about this.
Oh, boy.
So the insanity plea is interesting, and it's not as kind of cut and dried as people think it is. It's also very uncommon to get away with it. Essentially, it's based on English law as well. Essentially, the idea is you are considered insane, not guilty by reason of insanity, if a cop was standing immediately to at your elbow, and you did the same thing anyway.
Interesting.
So the idea is you did not know what you were doing was wrong at the time, or you had no control over your body because you knew somebody is watching you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what that difference is. It doesn't mean like a person could have mental illness, but not have been quote unquote insane at the time of whatever crime they committed.
Fair.
Okay.
So the court's majority at the appellate level said, based on earlier testimony, this guy would not have been able to comprehend the criminality of his conduct at the time of the offense. They knew he was not of sound mind when he began attacking his victim. And how did they know that? Well, according to their reversal of that jail sentence, they said this guy was under the, quote, grip of a psychotic delusion. And how did they know that? They said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but they said, it's obvious. This guy had said out loud, and there were witnesses who said this, that he was acting on God's wishes, that he was trying to eliminate Satan, who he felt was his neighbor, in order to bring peace to the world for the next 1,000 years. And the judges basically said, isn't that completely weird? Here's what they actually said in the decision.
The original decision.
Or the appellate.
Okay.
Appellate decision. No one suggested an alternative motive for this guy's attacks other than to eliminate Satan pursuant to a commandment from God. Basically, they said his delusion, namely that the victim was Satan, whom he was determined to kill or incarcerate for 1,000 years. Thus, from the outset, there is no reason to think that this guy, in carrying out this command, would necessarily know that his divine commission of destroying a demon or Satan would be unlawful. So basically, they said, this guy believed he was trying to kill Satan. To him, it was a commandment from God.
Yeah.
His religious delusions were so strong that there's no reason he would have known his actions were illegal.
Does he have any diagnoses that we
Don't know,
have?
don't care, doesn't
Okay.
matter. Here's the problem with that logic. And it doesn't really take a genius to find the logical hole here. And this is the introduction to a legal paper that was recently published by Joe Dunman, who is an assistant professor at the Louisville Brandeis School of Law. And he basically said there is a huge problem with religious insanity as a defense. And this is why I wanted to talk about it here. He said that if a court accepts an insanity plea, what they are saying is a suspect holds beliefs that are not true. And we all know they are not true. That's how delusions work. But when those beliefs are religious, as this dude's were, what the courts are doing is they are taking a position that your religion is bullshit. And they are not allowed to do that in our courts. And this is what the legal professor writes. To declare that a religiously delusional criminal defendant is insane requires a court to declare as a matter of fact and law that their religious beliefs are untrue. And the First Amendment prohibits this, which is fair. If someone says, God spoke to me and told me to commit a crime, yeah, we might be tempted to say you're delusional, you're insane. But which part of that is delusional? Because a lot of Christians say God speaks to them.
Sure.
That is not weird in Christian circles. That is not weird. It's not weird for Christians to act on what they think God said to them. Like maybe a fundamentalist Christian says, God told me to marry this person I just met 4 minutes ago. God told me to accept a job in another state or at another church because God told me it was part of a plan. That is normal to hear in Christian circles, even if people like us might think God didn't talk to you about that. But if millions of people believe God speaks to them personally, is it a delusion anymore? I mean, not according to some definitions. Like when Richard Dawkins published The God Delusion, there was some debate like, why are you calling it a delusion? If people believe it and they believe it's true, like clinically speaking, that's not a delusion. Whatever, I'm not getting into that book. But if someone says, I heard God, God spoke to me, I acted on it, that's weird. I think you're wrong, but it's arguably not a delusion. And what happens then if that person does something criminal? Is it fair for a court to say that's a delusion or that's insanity? And that's the dilemma. The professor writes, for several reasons, most legal definitions of delusion lose their usefulness when applied to beliefs commonly considered religious. So let's go back to this dude I was just talking about. Though few people might believe God spoke directly to Amir Kondo, many people believe that God speaks directly to them, and majority of Americans still believe in the devil as God's supernatural nemesis. Why would Kondo's thematically common religious statements not meet sanity's acceptability threshold? So he spends a lot of time looking at the ways the legal system has tried to define delusion and if something is objectively false. Like, how are they allowed to say something is false?
Sure.
But it gets really complicated quickly because the legal system does not have any way to prove objectively that someone is wrong when they say, God told me to do something, which is very interesting.
So I guess, okay, here's my question or clarification.
Hold that thought. Write it down. We're going to come back to it. I'm going to finish this, and then you can discuss. He said, now, let's take it out of the religious context. What if someone said, my pregnancy was the result of an immaculate conception with God? Like, if they said, I'm pregnant, but I'm infertile, that we could say is a delusion, because the pregnancy would defy physical reality.
Right.
But if they said, God impregnated me, that actually, legally speaking, is not delusional because there's no proof that your belief is false. What if we can't find the father or something? Like, we don't know what happened. Like, you could play this game with the Eucharist, too. Catholics believe consecrated wafers are literally the body of Christ.
Right.
Is that true? No, of course not. We know that's not true. If you give an unconsecrated wafer and a consecrated wafer and you sent them to a scientific lab, they would say there is no difference between these two wafers. But Catholics believe one of them is magic and the other is not. And that's the thing. Is it a delusion then to believe that a consecrated wafer is the body of Christ? From a legal perspective, the answer is no, because millions and millions of people believe that.
So if somebody destroyed a bunch of wafers that were consecrated and somebody else attacked that person.
Because you have murdered somebody.
Because you've murdered the body of Christ or whatever.
I know, it gets weird. And here's the thing. The legal professor goes back to the broader question here. Do we want government officials taking sides on religion? Of course we don't. That's what separation of church and state is all about. Even if I believe something you think is stupid or wrong, it doesn't matter. We have freedom of religion. And yet, the legal system, the professor argues, is forcing judges to make those calls. Because when a court says you're religiously insane, and that's why we're reversing this ruling, they are taking the position that your religious beliefs are not true. Those judges have no choice, the professor said, but to declare certain religious beliefs false in order to find a guy like this delusional and therefore insane.
And so where's the line between how many people have to believe a thing before it is not a delusion?
So you're saying, you're suggesting, okay, well, maybe they ought to consider how many people believe it. What's the line? Where do you draw the line? And that is the question. There is no answer to that question. And it's not like the judges are going to get called out on it, especially if they're imprisoning someone who says, God told me to commit murder, because it's beyond the pale. Of course, that's a religious delusion. Everyone thinks that, even if you're religious. But the flip side of that is we can't tell the judges not to do the thing they're doing because consider the slippery slope here. If we tell judges, you're not allowed to say someone's religion is untrue, what is stopping every criminal defense lawyer from saying, my client who struggles with the mental illness, I mean, they're just doing whatever God tells them to do. You can't say otherwise. So
the only thing I keep coming back to is the idea of like my right to swing my fist ends at your face. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Of like, I can do whatever I want to do, but as soon as I'm like harming somebody else,
I think we're neither of us are lawyers. We're not talking about a specific case here. The issue is, what are judges supposed to do?
No, this is
they have thought through all this stuff that we're talking about, but they get to make a proclamation on these things. And if right now they can say certain religious beliefs are false, then, and even though they have no business saying that, but if we tell them you can't make that call, there's a loophole large enough for like a monster truck to drive through.
Well, I'm thinking of Son of Sam, who shot a bunch of people in New York City in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And he said, this was a lie, but he said that his neighbor's dog told him to do it. Mm-hmm. Like his neighbor's dog was Sam or was the Sam. It doesn't matter. It ended up being a lie, but it's a very much perpetuated story in kind of American culture. So I guess my question is, if the Son of Sam was like, God is speaking to me through this dog.
Yeah. Are you allowed to say, no, he wasn't. God didn't tell you to do it. You're bullshitting us. Yeah. So we're going to say you're guilty for lying and stuff. But if a judge can say, well, I have no business telling you God didn't speak to you, like, that would be problematic, too.
Yeah.
So what the guy suggests, what the professor suggests, is there is a way around this.
Oh.
And it's basically making any defendant sign a waiver. And basically, right now, defendants they can waive their right to a jury trial. They can waive their right to remain silent. They can basically do the same thing here, he says. Just let a judge know that or the lawyer for the defendant, if you want to plead insanity by religious delusion or whatever, that requires a judge to say your religious beliefs are bullshit.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And you have to say, look, we want to plead this, but we need you, judge, to be allowed to say that my religious beliefs are bullshit if you want to go that route. And if you're signing off on that, like, basically, this is what the waiver could say. Under the First Amendment, you have the right to religious freedom. Normally, that means no judge or jury may test the truth or falsity of any religious beliefs you hold. Mm-hmm. Do you understand that? And they should say yes. Mm-hmm. But then the defendant must be made aware that in order to determine whether they were insane at the time the crime was committed, the court has to determine that they suffered from incapacitating delusions, and that delusions are beliefs that are false, which means a successful insanity plea requires me, the judge, to declare your religious beliefs false. Are you okay with me doing that if I choose to go that route? And if the defendant or his lawyer signs off on that, okay, problem solved. The judge isn't doing anything illegal anymore. And okay, fine. I don't know how much traction that should get, but I found that to be a very interesting, compelling argument about how do we get judges, should they be allowed to say your religious beliefs are bullshit? And I don't know that we want a judge being able to do that right now. And that's fascinating to me.
That's
I don't know.
really
Maybe lawyers who study this stuff have a different take on it. I think that could be a problem because if you allow a judge to sign that sort of waiver, the defendant to sign that sort of waiver, giving the courts the ability to say your religious beliefs are bullshit, I suspect conservative Christians would likely push back against anything that allows any judge to declare anybody's religious beliefs are bullshit, even if it's for the sake of closing this loophole, because they don't want the government being allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Which I kind of understand. I don't want the government taking a position on religion.
So like Gary Ridgway he basically killed every sex worker he could find because he believed they were sinners. Where does that land? And like, it's not that God told him, but he felt it was his Christian duty.
Ask a real lawyer.
Oh, so you could ask me questions and I can't ask you shit?
That's how this works. And then last story for you. It's a quick one. It's an update. We spoke a few weeks ago that California's attorney general sued a Catholic hospital because this woman needed to get an abortion It was an emergency. She
this
went
is an
to the nearest
awful
hospital.
story.
Yeah, she went to the nearest hospital that had an emergency room. And they said, yeah, we can't perform this because we're a Catholic hospital. So you have to go to a different place. But if she took the time to go to that other hospital or get airlifted there or whatever, she probably would have died. They said, why don't you go to this shittier hospital 20 minutes away? Here's a mop and a bucket in case anything bleeds in the car. And thankfully she survived. But by the way, that other hospital she went to, literally today, Halloween, they just shut down their pregnancy unit because rural hospitals are like losing money, funding. Anyway, that was the story we talked about a while ago.
God, we hate women in this country.
The Attorney General of California sued that Catholic hospital. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, normally you do have the right not to perform abortions because you're a Catholic-owned hospital. But the law in California says if you're a hospital, any kind, that has an emergency room, you have to take anybody that comes in those doors and you have to do whatever is necessary to help them. To the best of your abilities, of course. But if a woman came there and every doctor looking at this woman would say she needs an abortion, she needs abortion care right now, even if you're a Catholic hospital, you have to do it because you have an emergency room in your facility. So you got to take care of the patient.
Yep.
So that was the lawsuit. That's what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And now there is a resolution to this. The hospital and the Attorney General of California, they've been in court for the past couple of weeks trying to deal with this. They just reached, it's not technically a settlement, but they've reached an agreement that says, make your lawsuit go away, California, and in return, the hospital says, we will definitely do what the law tells us to do. And so this agreement says, in exchange for the lawsuit being dropped, and the hospital doesn't have to admit it did anything wrong, but in exchange, the officials at St. Joseph say we will allow our doctors to perform an abortion if they feel it's necessary to save the life of the patient.
Okay.
Fine. That's obviously the right thing to do. It's also something a lot of Catholic hospitals have gone out of their way to avoid. They also have promised we will not transfer pregnant patients to another hospital unless doctors here have done everything they can to help the patients, and that includes abortion care. And they're and the doctors have to be sure that if we are transferring the patient to another hospital, they will survive. It's not going to harm the patient in any way. So that is the right outcome. The Attorney General, Rob Bonta, he said this: while Providence St. Joseph should have been complying with state law up to now, thereby avoiding the harm and trauma to Californians they caused, I am pleased that the hospital has agreed to fully comply with the law going forward, ensuring access to life-saving health services, including emergency abortion care. So good. I mean, this should not have required a lawsuit. A patient needed emergency care. That care involved an abortion. Abortion is health care. And the Catholic hospital refused to do it because it likes almost dead fetuses over living women. They wanted the woman to suffer even more before they would have helped her out. That's how pro-life they are.
That'll learn her for getting pregnant.
And again, there's the good resolution. And that's in California.
Yeah.
That's a blue state where all of this had to happen. They had to go to court to make a Catholic hospital think about the patients. But that's what it took. You can't count on the Catholic Church to do the right thing.
Oh, God, no.
It took the secularly elected Attorney General to get the Catholic Church to take the moral high ground here.
Yeah, and how could we know what the Catholic Church would have done? They only have 1,000 years of history of trying to destroy women.
But
shocked.
no theaters to learn about the hypotheticals and think about what they might do.
I cannot believe people are still Catholic.
Anyway,
I really don't have much to talk about in the bonus episode. There was an episode of Bad People that I don't necessarily want to talk about, but going back to the trad wife story we did earlier, the most recent episode of Bad People, it's a BBC podcast, is about a trad wife and a tragedy that happens. See what I did there? Professional broadcaster.
I'm ashamed to know you.
So rude.
Yes.
I saw Smile 2, which was really good, and I enjoyed it. Do you have anything to talk about in the bonus?
I've had
a really boring life lately.
That's good.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Please go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast to support this show. Leave your reviews on the iTunes.
I've got a 5-star review from Grace MCH from Thursday. I've been listening since I was a freshman in high school, 8 years. Oh my God, I'm the oldest person I've ever met. And Heaven and Jessica have played a big role in shaping my beliefs and how I interact with the world. I love the podcast overall. Specifically, something relatively small but really important to me was hearing from 2 fellow South Chicago suburb folks in a way that made me feel less alone during a time in my life where I really needed that. So thank you. Sent with love from Palos Hills. Oh, Palos Hills.
Thanks. South suburbs.
South suburbs. I used to write at Stanley Luke, and there's a Palos Hills farm, and if anybody transferred to our barn, we would make fun of them because they didn't know how to tack up a horse. Anyway, that's just some bitchy horse girl shit. Anyway.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Go vote.